The moment a loyal dog disappears without a trace, you realize how much of your heart was walking around on four legs. The morning air over coastal North Carolina smells of salt, pine, and damp earth as Staff Sergeant Caleb Turner turns his pickup truck onto the gravel driveway leading to the small house he has called home for nearly 15 years. The first light of dawn stretches across the horizon in pale shades of gold and blue. Seagulls drift overhead. A cool breeze moves through the trees. After 2 weeks away helping fellow veterans with a disaster recovery project several states away, all Caleb wants is a hot cup of coffee, a quiet porch, and the familiar sight of Shadow racing across the yard the second he hears the truck engine. That had always been the routine. Every single time. Rain, sunshine, summer, winter. Shadow always came running. Caleb parks beside the house and reaches for his duffel bag. Before he even steps out, he notices something strange. The yard is quiet. Too quiet. No movement near the fence. No excited scratching at the kennel gate. No barking. No Shadow racing through the grass. He tells himself the dog is probably asleep. After all, Shadow is 8 years old now. Older. Slower. Yet the feeling in Caleb's chest refuses to settle. He closes the truck door and walks toward the backyard. The wooden gate creaks softly as he pushes it open. The morning sunlight slips through tall pine branches overhead. Everything looks normal. The water bowl sits where it always sits. The old tennis ball rests near the porch steps. The kennel stands beneath a large oak tree at the edge of the property. Caleb smiles slightly as he approaches. Shadow, he calls. Silence answers. His smile fades. He walks faster. Shadow. Still nothing. The kennel comes fully into view. Empty. Caleb stops moving. For several seconds, he simply stares. The gate hangs partially open. The blanket inside remains untouched. The stainless steel food dish sits in the corner exactly where he left it before departing. His pulse begins to rise. Shadow never wandered. Not once. Not ever. Years of military training and habit made certain of that. Caleb drops his duffel bag onto the grass and begins searching the yard. Behind the shed. Along the fence line. Around the porch. Every place Shadow normally liked to rest. Nothing. The silence grows heavier. The wind moves through the pine needles overhead with a whispering sound. Caleb checks the road. No sign. He checks the neighboring property. No sign. 30 minutes pass. Then 40. A knot forms in his stomach. By now Shadow should have appeared. By now he should have heard something. A bark. A movement. Anything. Instead, the morning seems determined to offer only silence. Caleb returns to the kennel and kneels beside the entrance. Years of service taught him to observe details others miss. The latch is intact. No damage. No broken boards. No indication that anyone forced entry. Yet Shadow is gone. Then something catches his eye. Half buried beneath loose dirt near the back corner of the kennel lies a familiar piece of metal. Caleb reaches down and brushes away the soil. His breath catches immediately. It is Shadow's old military dog tag. Not the one currently attached to his collar. The older one from years ago. The one Caleb had stored away after retirement. He stares at it in confusion. That tag should not be here. It should be inside a wooden memory box in the house. Caleb turns the metal over in his hand. The surface bears scratches from age and service. Then he notices something unusual. A fresh mark runs across the back. Not random. Not accidental. 3 distinct grooves carved into the metal recently enough that the edges still shine in the morning light. Caleb studies them carefully. The lines seem deliberate. Intentional. Almost like a message left behind by someone trying to point toward something. His heart begins beating faster. He looks toward the dense pine forest stretching beyond the property line. The woods stand silent beneath the rising sun. Shadow had spent years exploring trails there alongside him. Hunting paths. Training routes. Old memories. Caleb closes his hand around the dog tag. The breeze grows colder. Somewhere deep among the trees, far beyond the edge of the yard, a crow calls once and falls silent again. Caleb slowly rises to his feet. He cannot explain why, but for the first time since discovering the empty kennel, he no longer feels like Shadow is lost. He feels like Shadow wants him to find something. The old dog tag feels heavier than metal as Caleb Turner stands at the edge of the pine forest staring into the shadows between the trees. Morning sunlight filters through the branches in thin golden beams, but somehow the woods seem darker than they should. He turns the tag over again, studying the 3 fresh grooves carved into the back. They are too deliberate to ignore, too recent, too precise. Shadow had always been intelligent, but after years working together, Caleb had learned something even more important. The German Shepherd never did anything without a reason. The cool breeze carries the scent of pine needles and damp earth as Caleb slips the tag into his jacket pocket and begins walking toward the tree line. Every few steps, he stops to examine the ground. At first, there is nothing unusual. Fallen branches, deer tracks, squirrels moving through the undergrowth. Then he notices a shallow impression near a patch of soft soil. A paw print. His pulse quickens. He kneels beside it. The print is old enough to be partially faded but fresh enough to remain visible. Large. Familiar. Caleb does not need measurements to recognize it. He has spent nearly a decade walking beside those paws. A strange mixture of relief and concern settles over him. Shadow came this way. The question is why. He follows the trail deeper into the woods. The forest grows quieter with every step. Tall pines sway gently overhead. Sunlight dances across patches of moss. Somewhere in the distance, a woodpecker taps against a tree trunk. As he walks, old memories begin surfacing. He remembers long training exercises years earlier. He remembers Shadow running ahead on narrow trails before stopping to make sure Caleb was still following. He remembers difficult days when the dog seemed to understand his thoughts before a single word was spoken. The memory brings a small smile that quickly fades. Because this trail feels different. This is not a game. This is not training. This feels like a message. Nearly an hour passes before Caleb reaches an old clearing he has not visited in years. The grass here grows taller than the surrounding forest floor. Wildflowers sway in the breeze. For a moment, he simply stands and listens. Silence. Then something catches his eye. Hanging from a low branch is a faded strip of fabric. Caleb walks closer. His breath catches. The fabric once belonged to an old training vest Shadow wore during retirement exercises. The material is weathered but recognizable. Another sign. Another breadcrumb. Caleb removes it carefully and places it beside the dog tag. The feeling grows stronger. Shadow is not lost. Shadow is leading him somewhere. The realization sends a chill through him. He glances deeper into the forest. Endless rows of pines stretch beyond sight. Yet for the first time since arriving home, he feels a sense of direction. Before continuing, Caleb sits briefly on a fallen log and removes a water bottle from his backpack. As he takes a drink, he cannot help thinking about how many people understand the bond between a veteran and his dog. Some do. Many do not. Because until you have trusted your life to another soul, it is difficult to explain. If you appreciate stories about loyalty, courage, and the extraordinary connection between people and dogs, remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you do not miss future stories that remind us why that bond matters. Caleb returns the bottle to his pack and stands. The forest seems almost expectant now. Waiting. Watching. He continues forward. Another 20 minutes pass. The ground begins sloping upward. Pine needles cover the trail like a rust-colored carpet. Then he notices something that stops him cold. Carved into the bark of a large tree are 3 fresh marks. 3 grooves. Identical to the ones on the dog tag. Caleb slowly approaches. His heart begins pounding. Shadow could not carve symbols into a tree, which means someone else was involved. Someone who understood the significance of those markings. Someone who wanted Caleb to keep moving forward. He places a hand against the rough bark and stares deeper into the woods. The afternoon sun continues rising above the trees. Somewhere far ahead, hidden beyond the ridges and shadows, answers are waiting. And for the first time since Shadow vanished, Caleb realizes he may not be searching for a missing dog at all. He may be following a trail that was left specifically for him. The 3 carved marks on the tree seem to stare back at Caleb Turner long after he removes his hand from the bark. The afternoon sun filters through the towering pines above, casting shifting patterns of light across the forest floor. Somewhere in the distance, a breeze moves through the branches with a low whisper that sounds almost like a voice carried from another time. Caleb remains still for several moments, listening, waiting, hoping to hear something familiar. A bark, a movement, the sound of paws against fallen leaves. But the woods offer only silence. He reaches into his pocket and removes the old dog tag once again. The 3 grooves carved into the metal match the marks on the tree perfectly. There is no doubt now. These signs are connected. The question is who left them. As he studies the tag, a memory surfaces from years earlier. It arrives with surprising clarity. A warm summer afternoon at a marine training facility. Shadow was barely 2 years old then, full of energy, intelligence, and curiosity. Caleb remembers placing small training markers along a wooded trail and teaching the young German shepherd to follow them one by one. Most dogs learn commands. Shadow learned patterns. He seemed to understand intention. More than once, instructors joked that the dog thought 3 steps ahead of everyone else. Caleb smiles despite the worry sitting heavy in his chest. Shadow had always been different. The memory fades as he continues deeper into the forest. The terrain becomes steeper. Exposed roots twist across the path like old ropes. Patches of sunlight break through gaps in the canopy overhead. Every few hundred yards, Caleb finds another sign. A broken branch positioned unnaturally. A small stone resting on top of a weathered stump. Another set of shallow paw prints preserved in soft earth near a stream. None of them prove anything on their own. Together they form a trail. A trail that seems almost impossible to ignore. Nearly an hour later, he reaches a narrow ridge overlooking a shallow valley. The view stretches across acres of pine forest rolling toward the horizon. Caleb pauses to catch his breath. The scent of warm pine resin fills the air. Below him, sunlight glitters on a winding creek. For a moment, the beauty of the landscape reminds him of another day long ago. Another ridge. Another mission. Another moment when Shadow changed everything. He remembers becoming separated from part of his unit during a training exercise years earlier. Thick fog had covered the mountains. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. Several routes looked identical. Confusion spread quickly. Yet Shadow remained calm. The German shepherd simply stopped, turned, and nudged Caleb toward a different trail. Minutes later, they discovered the correct path. The instructors later confirmed it had been the safest route available. Caleb had trusted Shadow completely ever since. That trust remains now, strong as ever. As he begins descending the ridge, something catches his eye near the base of a large pine tree. He approaches cautiously. Resting against the trunk is a small metal object partially hidden beneath fallen needles. His heart immediately begins racing. He kneels and brushes away the debris. It is not Shadow's collar. Not a leash. Not a toy. It is an old Marine Challenge coin. Weathered. Scratched. Faded by years of exposure. Caleb freezes. He recognizes it instantly. The coin belonged to his friend Daniel Brooks, a fellow Marine who passed away from illness nearly a decade earlier. Daniel had loved Shadow like family. During difficult days after retirement, Daniel often joined them on hikes through these very woods. Caleb slowly turns the coin over in his hand. His throat tightens. What is this doing here? The coin disappeared years ago. He searches the surrounding area and notices something else. Beneath a layer of pine needles lies the faint outline of an old trail. A trail leading farther into the forest than Caleb has traveled in years. The realization sends another chill through him. Shadow is not wandering aimlessly. He is leading Caleb somewhere connected to the past. Somewhere connected to memories long forgotten. Somewhere connected to Daniel. The afternoon light begins shifting toward evening as Caleb stands and follows the hidden trail. The forest grows quieter with every step. Then suddenly he stops. His entire body goes still. Far beyond the trees, carried softly through the distance, comes a sound he would recognize anywhere in the world. One bark. Deep. Strong. Familiar. Caleb's eyes widen. His heart nearly stops. For a moment, he wonders if he imagined it. Then the sound comes again. Slightly louder this time. Somewhere ahead, hidden among the pines, Shadow is waiting. The second bark echoes through the forest, and every muscle in Caleb Turner's body tightens at once. There is no doubt anymore. He would recognize that voice anywhere. Across crowded training grounds. Across storm-soaked mountains. Across years of memories. It is Shadow. The sound rolls between the pines and fades into the evening air. Caleb immediately moves forward, following the direction as quickly as the uneven terrain allows. Fallen branches crack beneath his boots. The hidden trail winds deeper into the woods, curving around massive trees whose roots twist across the earth like old veins. The sun hangs lower now, painting the forest in shades of amber and gold. Every few moments Caleb stops and listens. His heartbeat seems louder than the forest itself. Then another bark arrives. Closer. Clearer. Hope surges through him. Shadow, he calls. His voice disappears among the trees. No answer follows except the whisper of wind moving through pine needles overhead. Caleb continues. The old Marine Challenge coin remains in one pocket. The dog tag rests in the other. Together they feel less like objects and more like pieces of a puzzle slowly revealing itself. As he walks, memories of Daniel Brooks return with increasing clarity. Daniel had been one of the few people who truly understood the bond between Caleb and Shadow. During difficult years after military service, when sleepless nights and quiet days seemed endless, Daniel often joined them on long hikes through these very woods. He used to joke that Shadow was the smartest member of their little group. More than once, the German Shepherd had located trails none of them noticed. More than once, Shadow had led them safely back when darkness arrived sooner than expected. The memory brings a smile that quickly fades as Caleb wonders why Daniel's coin appeared here after all these years. Another bark sounds ahead. This time it is followed by movement. A flash of black and tan fur appears briefly between distant trees before vanishing again. Caleb freezes. His breath catches. Shadow. The figure disappears almost immediately. Yet the glimpse is enough. He saw him. There is no question. Excitement floods through him, but something feels strange. If Shadow knew he was there, why did he not come running? Why did he disappear again? Caleb presses forward, weaving through clusters of pine trees and thick patches of brush. The forest gradually opens into a wide stretch of land he has not seen in nearly a decade. The sight stops him in his tracks. An old campsite rests at the center of the clearing. Nature has slowly reclaimed it. Grass grows through weathered boards. Moss covers sections of stone. A rusted fire ring sits near the middle. Caleb stares silently. He knows this place. Years ago, before Daniel became ill, the three of them spent weekends here. Fishing, talking, watching sunsets through the trees. Shadow had loved this spot. The realization sends a chill across Caleb's skin. He steps carefully into the clearing. The evening air feels still, almost sacred. Then he notices fresh paw prints crossing the soft dirt near the fire ring. Large, distinct, recent. Shadow has been here. Not days ago, not weeks ago, recently. Caleb follows the prints toward a large fallen log at the edge of the campsite. Resting beneath it is something wrapped in an old waterproof cloth. His pulse quickens. He kneels and carefully unfolds the material. Inside rests a small metal box, weathered but intact. Caleb immediately recognizes it. Years ago, during one of their camping trips, Daniel had buried a time capsule as a joke. He claimed future versions of themselves would appreciate it someday. None of them ever returned to retrieve it. Caleb slowly lifts the lid. Inside are photographs, handwritten notes, and small keepsakes from another chapter of their lives. A picture of Daniel laughing beside the campfire. A photograph of Shadow as a young dog proudly carrying a training dummy. An old snapshot showing all three of them standing together beneath these same trees. Caleb feels his throat tighten. For a long moment, he simply sits there holding the photographs while golden evening light filters through the branches overhead. Then a twig snaps somewhere behind him. Caleb turns. Standing at the edge of the clearing, half illuminated by the setting sun, is Shadow. The German Shepherd watches him quietly. His amber eyes are calm. His posture is steady. Yet instead of running forward, the dog remains exactly where he is. Watching. Waiting. Almost as if this discovery was the reason he brought Caleb here in the first place. For several long seconds, neither Caleb Turner nor Shadow moves. The forest seems to hold its breath around them. Golden evening light filters through the pines, illuminating tiny particles drifting in the air like floating dust from another lifetime. Caleb remains kneeling beside the open metal box, one hand resting on the faded photographs, while his eyes stay fixed on the German Shepherd standing at the edge of the clearing. Shadow's sable coat glows softly beneath the setting sun. His amber eyes never leave Caleb. There is no fear in them, no confusion, only a calm certainty that somehow makes the entire moment feel even more mysterious. Shadow, Caleb whispers. The dog's ears lift slightly. His tail moves once against the grass. Caleb expects him to run forward. Every part of him expects the reunion he has imagined since discovering the empty kennel that morning. Instead, Shadow remains where he is, watching, waiting. Then the German Shepherd turns and looks toward the far side of the clearing, not away from Caleb, Beyond him, towards something hidden among the trees. Caleb slowly rises to his feet. Years of working together have taught him how to read even the smallest changes in Shadow's behavior. This is not hesitation. This is communication. Shadow is trying to show him something. Caleb carefully places the photographs back into the box and lifts it into his backpack. The old challenge coin remains in his hand for a moment before he slips it into his pocket. He glances toward the place where Shadow is looking. The dog immediately takes several steps in that direction. Then he stops and looks back. The message is unmistakable. Follow me. A strange mixture of curiosity and emotion settles over Caleb as he begins walking. Shadow moves ahead along a narrow path, barely visible beneath fallen pine needles. The German shepherd never strays far. Every 20 yards he pauses and looks back to ensure Caleb is still behind him. The sight awakens memories so vivid they almost feel present. Long ago, during training exercises in unfamiliar terrain, Shadow always behaved the same way. He would move ahead, stop, check on Caleb, then continue. Not leading from arrogance. Leading from loyalty. The trail gradually descends toward lower ground. The air grows cooler. Evening shadows stretch longer between the trees. Somewhere nearby, water trickles softly over rocks. After nearly 15 minutes, the forest opens into a smaller clearing hidden deep within the woods. Caleb stops the moment he sees it. At the center stands an old wooden bench weathered by years of rain and sunlight. Pine needles cover much of the seat. Wildflowers grow around its base. The place feels forgotten, yet it is not unfamiliar. His heart tightens immediately. Daniel built that bench. Years ago, after receiving difficult medical news, Daniel spent an entire weekend here with Caleb and Shadow. Together, they hauled lumber into the forest and built a quiet place overlooking a small stream. Daniel called it the best view in the county. Caleb has not returned since his friend passed away. For a moment, emotion steals his breath. Shadow walks directly to the bench and sits beside it. The dog lowers his head slightly and looks at Caleb. The meaning feels impossible to ignore. Caleb approaches slowly. His boots crunch softly across the forest floor. As he reaches the bench, something catches his eye beneath one corner. A glass jar, carefully protected beneath a flat stone. Caleb kneels and retrieves it. Inside rests a folded envelope. His hands tremble slightly as he removes the paper. The handwriting on the front instantly freezes him in place. Daniel. There is no doubt. Caleb stares at the familiar writing for several seconds before carefully opening the envelope. The paper inside has yellowed with age but remains readable. As his eyes move across the first lines, a wave of emotion crashes through him. Daniel had written the letter years ago, long before illness took him away, long before life scattered everyone in different directions. The words are simple, honest, filled with gratitude. Daniel writes about friendship, about brotherhood, about how lucky he felt to share those years with Caleb and Shadow. Near the end, one sentence stands out above all others. If Shadow ever brings you back here, it means he remembered something I hoped nobody would forget. Caleb lowers the letter slowly. His vision blurs. He looks toward the German shepherd sitting quietly beside the bench. Shadow holds his gaze. In that moment, Caleb finally understands. The dog never disappeared to run away. He disappeared because he was keeping a promise made years earlier. And somehow, after all this time, he remembered exactly where it needed to be fulfilled. The letter remains in Caleb Turner's hands long after he finishes reading the final sentence. Evening settles slowly across the forest, bathing the clearing in warm amber light that filters through the pines like liquid gold. The stream beside the old bench murmurs softly over smooth stones. Somewhere high above, a pair of birds cross the fading sky. Yet Caleb notices none of it at first. His eyes remain fixed on the familiar handwriting. Daniel's words feel less like a letter and more like a voice reaching across the years. Shadow sits quietly nearby, watching him with calm patience. The German shepherd does not seem restless. He does not seem eager to leave. Instead, he appears completely at peace, as though he has finally arrived where he was meant to be. Caleb lowers the letter and looks toward his old companion. Emotion tightens his throat. You remembered, he whispers. Shadow's ears lift slightly. His tail brushes the ground once. The simple movement carries more meaning than words ever could. Caleb thinks back through the years. Through deployments, training exercises, long drives, difficult days, and quiet evenings. Shadow had always remembered things others forgot. Trails, faces, commands, places visited only once. But this is different. This is not memory alone. This is devotion. Somehow the dog had carried a promise for nearly a decade. A promise connected to a friend who was no longer here. Caleb sits on the bench and reads the letter again, more slowly this time. Near the bottom, he discovers a section he overlooked in his first wave of emotion. Daniel writes about the future, about how life changes people, about how distance and time sometimes convince us to leave parts of ourselves behind. Then one sentence catches Caleb's attention. If you find the second box, you will understand why I asked Shadow to remember. Caleb's heartbeat quickens. He scans the page again. There it is. A second box. His eyes move around the clearing instinctively. The forest suddenly feels larger, more mysterious. He looks toward Shadow. The German shepherd immediately stands. Caleb cannot help smiling. You already knew, didn't you? Shadow takes several steps away from the bench before looking back. The same look, the same silent request. Follow me. The last sunlight of the day glows through the trees as Caleb rises and shoulders his backpack. The old dog moves deeper into the woods at an easy pace, never straying far ahead. The terrain becomes rougher. Thick roots weave across the ground. Ferns crowd the trail. Shadows lengthen between the pines. Yet despite the growing darkness, Caleb feels lighter than he is all day. The fear that gripped him that morning has disappeared. Shadow is alive. Shadow is safe. And somehow, this journey has become about far more than finding a missing dog. After nearly 20 minutes, the forest opens once again. This clearing is smaller than the first. At its center stands an enormous oak tree, older than any surrounding pine. Its branches stretch outward like protective arms. Shadow walks directly to its base and stops. Caleb approaches slowly. The ground here appears undisturbed except for a patch of earth near one exposed root. Shadow places a paw beside it and looks up. Caleb kneels. The soil feels softer than the surrounding ground. Carefully, he begins brushing away leaves and loose dirt. Within moments, his fingers strike metal. His breath catches. There really is another box, smaller than the first, better protected from the elements. He lifts it free and wipes away years of soil. For a moment, he simply stares. The fading light reflects softly from its weathered surface. Shadow settles beside him. Together they sit beneath the ancient oak while evening gathers around them. Caleb opens the lid. Inside rests a folded map, several photographs, and a sealed envelope marked with his name. He reaches for the envelope first. His hands tremble slightly. Before opening it, he glances toward the German shepherd. Shadow's amber eyes shine warmly in the twilight. Not anxious, not uncertain. Content, as though the hardest part of his mission is finally complete. Caleb places a hand gently against the dog's shoulder. The familiar fur feels reassuring beneath his fingers. The forest grows quiet around them. Then, holding the envelope beneath the fading light, Caleb realizes the truth. Shadow did not disappear because he was lost. He disappeared because he was leading Caleb home to something he never knew he had left behind. The envelope feels impossibly light in Caleb Turner's hands, yet somehow heavier than anything he has carried in years. Twilight settles across the forest beneath the giant oak tree. The last traces of sunlight filter through the branches overhead, painting the clearing in soft shades of amber and blue. A cool evening breeze moves through the leaves. Shadow lies quietly beside him, resting on the ground with his head raised, watching every movement with calm attention. Caleb studies the handwriting on the envelope for several seconds before carefully breaking the seal. His heart beats faster than it should, not from fear, from anticipation, the kind that arrives when a door to the past begins opening unexpectedly. Inside is a single folded letter. The paper crackles softly as he unfolds it beneath the fading light. Daniel's handwriting fills the page. Familiar, steady, instantly recognizable. Caleb begins reading. The first lines bring an immediate smile. Daniel writes exactly the way he always spoke. Honest, warm, straight to the point. He talks about friendship, about loyalty, about the strange way life seems to move faster every year. Then the tone shifts. Daniel writes that he created the boxes because he knew memories fade if nobody protects them. People move. Houses change. Years pass. Yet some things deserve to remain. Caleb continues reading. The forest grows quieter around him. Even the stream nearby, seems to soften its voice. Halfway through the letter, Daniel reveals the reason for everything. Years ago, after receiving difficult medical news, he worried that one day important parts of their shared story might disappear. Not because anyone wanted to forget, simply because life keeps moving. So he created a trail built from memories. The challenge coin, the photographs, the letters, the hidden locations, and finally, Shadow. Caleb stops reading for a moment and looks toward the German Shepherd. Shadow gazes back with the same patient expression. Suddenly memories begin fitting together. The old dog tag, the carved symbols, the hidden campsite, the bench, the boxes. Every piece had pointed forward. Every clue had carried him one step closer. Not to a place, to a promise. Caleb returns to the letter. Near the bottom, Daniel writes something that makes his throat tighten. If you are reading this, then Shadow did exactly what I hoped he would do. He remembered. Caleb closes his eyes briefly. Emotion washes over him. Not sadness. Something gentler. Gratitude. The realization that a dog had carried a responsibility for nearly 10 years without anyone realizing it. Daniel continues. He explains that during their final camping trip together, he spent hours with Shadow near the old bench. While Caleb was gathering firewood, Daniel repeated a series of simple exercises. Familiar trails, familiar markers, familiar locations. At the time it seemed like harmless play. Now Caleb understands. Daniel had been teaching Shadow a route, a journey, a path back through memory itself. The final paragraph is short, very short, yet it leaves the deepest impact. Take care of each other. One of you remembers the past. The other reminds you to keep living in the present. Caleb lowers the letter slowly. The forest has grown darker. Stars begin appearing through gaps in the canopy overhead. For several moments, he simply sits beneath the ancient oak listening to the sounds of evening settling across the woods. Then he feels a familiar pressure against his arm. Shadow has moved closer. The German Shepherd gently places his head against Caleb's shoulder. The simple gesture breaks through the last of the emotional walls Caleb has carried all day. He wraps one arm around the dog and holds him close. Neither moves. Neither needs to. The silence says enough. Eventually, Caleb looks back into the metal box. Beneath the letter rests the folded map Daniel mentioned. He unfolds it carefully. Several locations are marked in faded ink. Campsites, trails, fishing spots, places important to their shared history. Yet one mark stands apart from the others. A circle near the edge of a ridge overlooking the coast. Next to it, Daniel wrote 3 simple words. Final sunrise point. Caleb studies the map. Then he glances toward Shadow. The German Shepherd's ears immediately lift, almost as though he already knows what comes next. Caleb cannot help laughing softly. There is one more place, isn't there? Shadow rises to his feet. His tail moves once. The answer is obvious. The journey is not finished. Somewhere beyond the darkness, beyond the trees, beyond the years that separated them from those memories, one final destination waits. And for the first time since discovering the empty kennel, Caleb realizes this was never a search. It was a homecoming designed by a friend who believed some promises should never be forgotten. The forest is almost completely dark by the time Caleb Turner folds the map and places it carefully inside his backpack. Above the towering pines, a blanket of stars slowly spreads across the North Carolina sky. The air has cooled noticeably. Crickets begin their nightly chorus. Somewhere far away, an owl calls once before silence returns. Shadow stands waiting beside the ancient oak, calm and patient as ever. Caleb studies him for a moment. The German Shepherd's silhouette is outlined by pale moonlight filtering through the branches overhead. It occurs to Caleb that this entire day has unfolded because of one dog's determination to finish something that began years ago. Not because he was ordered to, not because he had to, simply because loyalty had become part of who he was. Caleb adjusts his backpack and takes a deep breath. All right, partner, he says softly. Let us see this through. Shadow immediately turns and begins moving along a narrow trail leading north through the woods. The path is faint, almost invisible in places, yet the dog follows it without hesitation. Caleb keeps pace behind him. The terrain gradually rises. Pine-covered ridges replace the lower valleys. Moonlight spills across sections of open ground, creating silver pathways between shadows. The hike feels strangely familiar. Every now and then Caleb recognizes landmarks from long ago. A split boulder near a creek. An old cedar tree struck by lightning decades earlier. The remains of a forgotten hunting blind hidden among thick brush. Each location unlocks another memory. Another fragment of the years he shared with Daniel and Shadow. Time seems to fold in on itself. Past and present walking side by side beneath the stars. Nearly 2 hours pass before the trail emerges on a higher ground. The forest begins thinning. A steady coastal breeze drifts across the ridge, carrying the scent of salt water from miles away. Caleb removes the folded map and checks the final marked location. His pulse quickens. They are close. Very close. Shadow slows his pace. Then he stops completely. Ahead, beyond a cluster of weathered pines, the land opens onto a broad overlook facing east. Caleb steps forward. The sight steals his breath. Moonlight illuminates rolling hills descending toward the distant Atlantic coastline. Far beyond, tiny lights from fishing boats flicker against the dark horizon. The view feels endless. Peaceful. Timeless. This must be the place Daniel marked years ago. The final sunrise point. Caleb walks slowly toward the edge of the overlook. The wind moves gently across the grass. Then something catches his eye near a flat stone partially hidden beneath wildflowers. He kneels and brushes away the vegetation. A small bronze plaque emerges from beneath the leaves. Weathered, faded, yet still readable. His throat tightens immediately. Daniel's name is engraved across the surface. Below it are several lines of text. Caleb reads them slowly beneath the moonlight. They are not instructions, not clues, not secrets. They are words about friendship, about gratitude, about appreciating ordinary moments before they become memories. Near the bottom is one final sentence. If you were standing here, then you made it back. Caleb closes his eyes. Emotion washes over him stronger than at any point during the journey. All day he believed he was searching for Shadow. Then he believed Shadow was leading him toward a hidden promise. Now he finally understands the deeper truth. Daniel never created this trail to preserve objects. He created it to preserve connection. The dog tag, the challenge coin, the letters, the photographs, the locations. None of them were the destination. They were reminders. Reminders of friendship, brotherhood, loyalty. Reminders that the people and animals who shape our lives never truly disappear as long as their impact remains alive within us. A gentle pressure against his leg pulls him from his thoughts. Shadow stands beside him. Caleb kneels and wraps both arms around the German shepherd's neck. The dog leans into him quietly. No bark, no movement, just presence. The kind that says everything words cannot. They remain there together beneath the stars while the wind drifts across the overlook. Then Caleb notices something else. Along the eastern horizon, darkness is beginning to soften. Dawn is still hours away, but the first faint hint of tomorrow has already appeared. He looks toward Shadow and smiles. The German shepherd's tail moves slowly against the grass. At that moment, Caleb realizes why the final location was called the sunrise point. Some journeys are not meant to end in the dark. They are meant to lead you toward the light. The first rays of dawn arrive slowly across the horizon, painting the sky above the Atlantic coastline in shades of gold, amber, and pale blue. Caleb Turner sits on the grassy overlook beside Shadow and watches darkness retreat from the world below. The ocean glimmers in the distance. A cool breeze carries the scent of salt and pine through the morning air. For the first time in many years, there is no urgency in his thoughts. No destination waiting ahead. No mystery left unsolved. Only stillness. The kind of stillness that feels earned. Shadow rests beside him with his head lowered comfortably across his front paws. The German shepherd appears content, as though he understands exactly what this moment means. Caleb reaches down and runs a hand gently through the dog's fur. The familiar texture brings a smile to his face. Yesterday morning, he believed he had lost his closest companion. Now he realizes he had been given something far greater than answers. He had been given perspective. As the sun rises higher, warm light spills across the overlook and illuminates the bronze plaque beneath the wildflowers. Caleb reads the final sentence once more. If you were standing here, then you made it back. The words feel different now. He finally understands that Daniel was never talking about a location. He was talking about life. About finding a way back to gratitude. Back to friendship. Back to the people and memories that matter most. Several minutes later, Caleb rises to his feet. Shadow immediately stands beside him. Their eyes meet. Neither needs instruction. The journey is over. It is time to go home. The hike back through the forest feels entirely different from the search that brought them here. Yesterday, every trail carried uncertainty. Today, every path feels familiar. Morning sunlight streams through the pines. Birds sing from the branches overhead. The woods no longer seem mysterious. They feel welcoming, as if the forest itself has been protecting a story that simply needed the right moment to be told. Hours later, the familiar outline of Caleb's property appears through the trees. The old house sits quietly beneath the North Carolina sun. The kennel stands where it always has beneath the oak tree. Yet everything feels changed. Not because the place is different, because he is. Shadow trots ahead across the yard and stops beside the porch. His tail moves gently. Caleb laughs softly. The sound surprises him. He has not laughed that freely in a long time. Together, they climb the porch steps. For a moment, Caleb pauses at the front door and looks back toward the distant forest stretching beyond the property line. Somewhere out there are the hidden trails, the forgotten bench, the letters, the photographs, and the memories that connected all of it together. He silently thanks Daniel. Then he steps inside. The following weeks pass peacefully. The metal boxes are carefully preserved. The photographs find a place on the living room wall. The letters are stored safely where they can never be lost again. Caleb even returns to the overlook several times, sometimes alone and sometimes with Shadow beside him. Each visit feels less like a goodbye and more like a conversation that continues in quiet ways. One evening near the end of spring, Caleb sits on the porch watching the sunset. The sky glows orange above the trees. A warm breeze moves through the yard. Shadow lies nearby, comfortably stretched across the wooden boards. Caleb notices the dog slowly lift his head and look toward the forest. For a brief moment, the German shepherd seems to listen to something carried on the wind. Then he relaxes again and closes his eyes. Caleb smiles. Perhaps some promises never truly end. Perhaps they simply become part of who we are. He reaches down and places a hand gently on Shadow's shoulder. The old dog leans closer. The sun slips below the horizon. Evening settles across the property. House lights begin glowing in the distance. Somewhere beyond the trees, the world continues moving forward. Yet here, on this quiet porch, everything feels exactly as it should. A Marine, his loyal German shepherd, a friendship remembered, a promise fulfilled, and a home finally made whole again. Some dogs come home when they are lost. The rare ones leave home only to bring something precious back.